Hi, I'm Eric Ostro, host of Live at the Lortel. For Season 3, we are focusing on the intersection of arts and advocacy. So many off-Broadway artists give back to their communities. This season, we are giving them the opportunity to speak about how and why they chose the causes they devote themselves to, and how those causes help make them the people and artists they are today. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Ostro. Welcome to Live at the Lortel. I'm one of your hosts this evening, and I would love to bring on my co-host, my dear friend, John Andrew. Hi, John. Hello.
Hello.
Where were you just now?
Oh, I was just making an entrance because you make an
Oh,
entrance. You got to make an entrance,
all right.
and especially when you're interviewing Taylor Mack, who is so
Correct.
exciting,
Well, speaking of
and
him,
thrilling.
let's get right to it. Taylor Mack, who uses Judy as a gender pronoun, is a theater artist, author, MacArthur Fellow, Pulitzer Prize finalist, and Tony nominee for Best Play. Judy is a recipient of the Kennedy Prize with Matt Ray, the Doris Duke Performing Artist Award, a Guggenheim, the Herb Albert Award, a Drama League Award, the Helen Merrill Playwright Writing Award, the Booth, 2 Helpman Awards, a New York Drama Critics Circle Award, 2 Obies, 2 Bessies, an Ethel Eichelberger Award, and is the first American to receive the International Ibsen Award. And today we get to talk to him about the LGBT Asylum Task Force. Please welcome Taylor Mack.
Woohoo!
That's an entrance.
I gotta give you an entrance.
That's an entrance.
See?
Thank you so much. That's quite an entrance. That was lovely. How are you today,
Taylor?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Every day is another obstacle in this.
Yes, of course it is.
You just you bat them aside. You just keep jumping over the obstacles. That's what I'm doing.
Well, while we're talking, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now, which is the hang at here. Talk to us a little bit about the show, how it came about, and I know you run through March. I can't wait to see it in a few weeks. It's playing it here. So tell us a little bit about the play and how it came to.
Well, I read this Plato book called, the English kind of translation is The Apology. Some people call it the Apologia, Apologia, or whatever. Anyways, it's the exact translation of it isn't actually the apology; it's more the defense. But it was essentially Plato's take on the Socrates's defense at his trial. And when I read it many years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I thought this is a play, and I had just finished 24 Decade History of Popular Music, which was this big 24-hour-long extravaganza that I've been doing quite a number of years, and I thought I want a little palate cleanser show, something that's already kind of written that I just have to shape. And so I said, I'll do a solo version of this, of the Apology. And I'll just memorize the book and, and then I'll perform it. It'll be really simple and easy. But then when I started working on it, I thought, no, I want to write my own play version of it. And then when I really started doing it, I thought, no, I think it needs to be sung. The whole thing needs to be sung through. And then once that started happening, I said, I got to have other voices. And then once the other voices came, then it was like, but I need to get Matt Ray involved, who's my collaborator, who's a jazz musician, and I felt like it needed to be a jazz opera. And then suddenly it was, 17 people, all original material. But that's how we do things. So it's essentially a kind of, I guess you could describe it as a jazz opera. I think of it more as a fevered dream prayer that is asking us to wonder together rather than be in suspicion. so and it's all those things. It's sung through. There's incredible jazz musicians, incredible singers and performers, and of course our dear love Machine Dazzle, who's a longtime collaborator
Yes.
of ours, has designed both the set and the costumes, and it's so it's a little bit of his mind as well, not just a little bit, a lot of his mind, as well as Matt's extraordinary score, and then my crazy thoughts about the state of the world and community and how to be together.
I love that you wanted to use the apology as a palate cleanser. Just a simple little.
Well, it's fascinating because it's so much about what is happening right now in the culture, and how and I mean, when you read it, his defense is like, it could be just almost I mean, it's everything that the Mellitus and Knightis and Lycon, these three prosecutors, are essentially the GOP. I mean, it's
Right.
really shocking how similar it all is. So
it's incredible, and how you mirror it with your work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of fascinated by the ritual aspects of theater, that you go again and again, but also that the lights come down, um, the mystery begins. You don't. Daniel Fish said something wonderful to me about when he was doing Oklahoma. He said, "Well, I always thought the point of the theater was when the curtain parts, you don't know what's on the other side." And he got a lot of flack because when the curtain parted in Oklahoma, it wasn't Oklahoma. It was something different. And so he realized, people like to come to the theater to see the exact same thing, to see the thing that they know. There
Right.
is a large part of the theater going population that is their joy, and you can't deny them that. But I'm a little bit more in the camp of the curtain parts, and you don't know what's on the other side. And I always like to find the invitation for everyone to join the party and join this particular mystery or ritual. But yeah, I don't like to give people what they think they're gonna get. I like to surprise people.
Which is why I think you've had an incredible career for a long time, because it's the element of surprise. I think we all love coming to see your shows because we don't know what's behind there. I mean, there is that ritual of the lights go down, and if we think we're going to see Oklahoma, and then something else opens. But the power of your work and your talent is that we don't know what we're in for.
But I would also say that I think part of the draw for you is that we know that we're about to see something visually and just kind of like stunning. You have a way of like engaging all of the senses, and I'm curious about your aesthetic and how in a way opulent and grand it is. What is it about that aesthetic that speaks to you? I mean, other than it's so fun
Aesthetically for me, I'm always the content dictates the form kind of queen. So, which I learned from reading Sondheim's statements. So but I always think, what's the show about? And then I think, well, okay, so it's about the hang is about hanging out. It's about community. It's about trying to understand what virtue is. There's a line in Phaedo where Socrates says, Plato has Socrates say, um, uh, he's been writing poetry while he's been in the jail cell because he had a dream, and the dream said, write poetry and cultivate, and so he said he never was an artist. He was a thinker, a philosopher, and so he started writing poetry. And I thought, okay, well, then the show has to have poetry in it, that. So I start to think about what's the content, and that dictates the form. And and so that works aesthetically as well. For me, the show is it's kind of a radical fairy ritual. So then everyone has to be dressed like radical fairies because I really
Mm.
wanted to
Mhm.
bring back the ephemeral queer of Socrates rather than the
Mhm.
Plato academic version. That
Mhm.
because Plato wrote down everything that Socrates said, and Socrates didn't want him to write anything down. He wanted us to be able to practice our ideas with each other in the room, and to develop those skills. And so when Plato wrote things down, um, it kind of removed the philosophical practice in that specific way that Socrates wanted, and so and it also put it in the realm of academics and in the realm of gatekeeping and
Mm.
barriers
Mm.
between just engaging with other people about what it means to live a virtuous life in an unvirtuous world.
Mhm.
So for me, that's like, okay, well, let's bring the queer back in and the ephemeral back in, the theater back into it. And when every time I think let's bring the queer back in, I think radical fairies, and
Mm.
they're better at doing ritual than anybody, and so that aesthetic comes back into it. And then of course I just love working with Machine because he works metaphor instead of nothing's literal for him, and that's how I write. So it's a good pairing, I think.
Yeah,
Oh.
you and Machine have worked together for a very long time.
Yeah, it's been almost over 15 years, over
Oh,
15
Yeah,
for
amazing.
sure. Yeah,
it's a long time. You know, as
yeah.
as we're
It's almost
talking
20
about
years now. Yeah.
as we're talking about fairies, I would love to start out by talking a little bit about your advocacy and about the LGBT asylum force,
Yeah.
which you are a part of, and
Oh, I don't know if I'm not really a part of it,
well,
but
but you did an album, which part of the proceeds
yeah,
went to it. But can you
yeah.
tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
the
we
task
met
force?
them when we were touring New England, the a 24 Decade at Bridge show, and we went to Worcester, where
Hmm.
they're based, Worcester, Massachusetts, and there was a LGBT kind of exhibit of the history of LGBT people in Worcester, and part of the exhibit was this task force, and it was just so was inspiring. What they do is essentially people that where it's illegal to be queer in the world can seek asylum, but if they're granted asylum, they they have to spend 2 years in the country and they're not allowed to work. So
Hmm.
it's not really practical for them to come to the U.S. So that they got to break laws in order to stay here in order to survive. So what the task force does is they raise money and they give them housing and they give them spending money for those 2 years. When they first get here, they pick them up at the airport. They bring them to Worcester and they get them started. And it's just it's to me it was just incredibly moving. I just these are people who have been um, horribly abused
Yeah.
for their queerness. So it just feels like one of the great organizations, and that doesn't get a lot of attention. So I thought, because it's in Worcester, but it's doing this incredible international work. So I've just been throwing support to them as much as I can.
Yeah, people that are
That's awesome.
beaten and stoned and imprisoned and for being gay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
there
and
aren't a
most of
lot of
them is like
organizations.
survived,
Mhm.
barely. I mean, we're almost killed,
Yeah,
many of them. I mean, I don't need to go into the horrible
Yeah.
things that happened
right.
to them, but it's inspirational to think that people are digging in and helping.
Yeah, providing a safe space. I'm curious. You've used the word now, and you've talked about the fairies and the radical fairies. Can you, for those who don't know what radical fairies are, and how they're still going to this day, can you talk a little bit about the Radical Fairies?
Yeah, it's always I always feel a little weird about talking about them because I'm so inspired by that community. And I've been kind of Radical Fairy adjacent my whole life. So I've been hanging out with them in New York and been down to the sanctuary. They have the longest running commune in the history of America, consecutively running, and it still exists. And it was Harry Hay and a bunch of other queens that got together in the early 70s and created an organization called the Radical Fairies, which was just it was just a place where at that time it was gay men, but now it's all queers, or I mean, there's even some straight people involved. But I mean, as Penny Arcade said, a queer is somebody who was ostracized to such a degree as a young person that they don't want to ostracize anyone else. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the definition I think that the Radical Fairies are moving more towards. But in the beginning, it was all gay men, and they just wanted to be able to define their world from a gay male perspective, as opposed to having to adjust for the heteronormative perspective of things. So they would do things like hold workshops and gather 4 times a year, and then they created this commune where people would live and could come and recover from abuse, or so it's still in the same kind of spirit as the task force, the LGBT task force, but it's a little more grassroots and that it was,
But it's the
just about
idea, yeah.
people in America. But now it has branched out through. It's all over the world now.
Yeah.
But it's safe spaces again. It's about the
Yeah.
people coming to Worcester to find a safe space, and it's still very important for our queer people to have some place to kind of feel that they can be, or can be
Yeah.
seen, or can heal. And there's
And
something
what
wonderful about that.
for the hang, one of the main inspirations for it was I went down. I was doing Gary on Broadway, and and it was not the easiest process. And I thought, what, I'm just going to go down to the Radical Fairy gathering this year down in Tennessee, just to like release some pressure, because we'd finally got it up and running, and it was like fine and blah blah blah. And so I went down, and uh, while I was there, and I was mulling over the hang as an idea, while I was there, there was a whole ritual where everyone went to the glade, everyone was wearing white. The glade is this area where people brought the ashes of their loved ones during the AIDS epidemic, um, when you know family members wouldn't take the bodies, and so they don't know how many bodies or ashes are spread in this glade, but it's hundreds, if not thousands, and they don't know all the names, but it's a pretty spiritual place, and everyone gathered, and we did a whole kind of ancestor ritual there, and that really was deeply inspiring to this particular piece, about Socrates, which is really just about it's his final hours of life, and and everyone is coming to wail and cry and mourn him, and he's saying, let's just hang out, we got a couple more hours, let's hang out and talk about virtue. And that's the plot. That really
Mm.
is. That's all the plot is that they hang out and they talk about virtue together. But it's that radical spirit of how to mourn differently, how to celebrate differently, how to imagine our rituals differently. So instead of a passion play, can we have a play about Socrates once a year that we put on? That
Yeah.
asks us to speak about virtue instead of martyrdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I love
so
that.
great.
Your shows have a tendency to bring people together. At least the ones that I've seen in the past, even if it's uncomfortable, you want to your audience to make a connection of some kind.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that's my some of my favorite stories in the theater are in the theater that we've made is when we did Lily at the Hero Arts Center many years ago.
that's what I was going to
Uh,
ask about. Yeah.
yeah, we sold that one, sold out, and there were people were sleeping in their sleeping bags in order to get this before the internet really. So they were not totally before the internet, but before tickets were all online. And so in order to be there when here opened. They were spending the night outside, but as a result, people were meeting online, and two people like became lovers. And then when we did 20 for a decade, we have a slow dance moment where I asked everyone to slow dance with someone of their same gender, and these two guys found each other, and they've been with each other ever since.
Yeah,
so,
but
so
I was
it's
just
that kind of.
reading.
I love that. I love making audience find each other as a result of coming to our rituals.
Yeah, I mean, I read this story. I was reading. I've been doing my research on you the past week, and I read this interview, and you asked the audience to turn to someone, and you put this music on and to dance.
Yeah.
And these two men met, and there was a connection, and I think they each had boyfriends, or they were with
One
other
of them did,
people.
but he
One of
was,
them did, yeah. But
it
they've been
was
together ever
failing. It wasn't.
since. But
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's I think that's part of what it is. It's that's the beauty of making it more than just date night, actually, because theater has kind of
Mm,
become date night. It's the people go
mm,
once, a couple times a year or something like that but if you make it part of your daily practice or even your weekly practice, then it gets inside of your bones and your heart and the way that you communicate with everyone around you. And then what I loved about performing at Joe's Pub just and performing downtown in general is you do get to know the audience, and
yeah,
then people would come to see the 24 decade concerts again and again because it was kind of serial. You wanted to see various decades over a number of years, and they would say,
Right.
oh, it was an opportunity for them to reconnect with their friends at these shows. And so we really everyone always says, oh, you're building community, but we actually tangibly were building community because people would come back and they would meet each
yeah,
other, and then people started businesses who met at the shows, and because it was an
amazing.
ongoing thing. It's a little like church in that way, but it asks you to, instead of just hunkering down and rooting for one team or one god, like a sporting event or a church. Those are rituals that people have in their lives. But the theater can be another ritual that says, you can root for many teams at the same time.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
yeah.
you don't have to choose one god. You could,
Yeah, I mean, theater
I
is
love that.
kind of church in a way. You bring your
yeah.
humanity. You bring like it gives us so many lessons, and one of the things that I'm getting about you is that you have a deep care also for your audience, and a friend of mine was able to do when you actually did the whole 24 hour,
Uh-huh.
and I remember him saying that after you did it, there was like another meetup. I think like a couple days later or a day
Yeah,
later.
a day
Um,
later, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, can you talk about why that was? It felt like you had to check in with them and go, "How are y'all doing?" And that's a
Yeah.
lovely thing for
Yeah.
a theater artist to do. And
Well, I knew that was a little logistical because I knew that, I mean, my favorite kind of theater to go to is when, um, in England, they all have pubs attached to the theater, so you go see the show and then you go hang out in the pub and talk about the show.
yeah,
Uh, and that's just, I knew that 20 for a decade was so long that who was going to want to hang out for the 25th or 6th hour to talk about the show. People needed to go home, go to sleep. It turned out that people did actually hang out and talk for another hour or two after after the show, which was insane to me. But 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 I wanted to be part of that, too.
Yeah,
yeah,
of
So it was a
course.
little selfish on my part, but it was about go home, go to sleep, and then come back. We'll hang out in the park, and we can all talk about what we went through. And it wasn't any kind of organized way. It was just a gathering. People brought food, and you just popped around to different people and talked about things. And yeah, it's a little bit like saying, all the preparation is important for a show, and the show is important, but there's also the post that
yeah.
I think is equally as important. And I really do care about the audience probably more than anybody else, which is not always so good. I ask my collaborators to
Mhm,
stay up for 23 hours,
mhm.
like, or,
Yeah.
break their backs, I mean, they all stayed up for 24, but but I care about the audience a great deal, and everything is designed to try to communicate to the audience. I'm always trying to, like, let's do the show for the worst seat in the house.
Yeah.
That's what I always try to do.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the 24-hour this play that we're talking about, and for our audience, I don't know why you wouldn't know about it, but I would love for you to give us a little bit of a background on it and tell us a story about how it came about and what it was.
Yeah. Well, 24 Decade was when I was 14. I went to the first AIDS walk in San Francisco, and I'd
Hmm.
never met an out homosexual before. Uh, so I got there, and the first time I ever saw an out homosexual, it was thousands of them all at the same time.
Mm.
And the reason they were there is because their loved ones were dying. So they were
Yeah,
pushing them in wheelchairs, and they were dying themselves, and people
yeah,
were furious. And there was also a lot of joy and celebration because people were gathered. And what I didn't really realize this at the time, but over the years I've thought about it, and I thought, oh, they were building their community because they were being torn apart.
Mm.
And and then when you look at U.S. history, you see that again and again and again and again. And when we had made Lily, I realized I was trying to make a metaphorical representation of that feeling of discovering queer agency and queer history and queer pride en masse like that all at the
mhm,
same time. Um, but I was doing it unconsciously. And so when I started 24 Decade, I thought I want to do this consciously, and I want to expand it outside of not just the queer community, but all many, not all, I couldn't possibly do all of them, but many different communities throughout US history that have built themselves as a result of being torn apart.
Mm.
So every decade focuses in on a different community that did that. Sometimes they're obvious, and sometimes they're metaphorical. Sometimes it's a couple people, sometimes it's thousands of people, sometimes it's the whole country, sometimes a very small group. So um, but that's what we did, and we made it a concert, because again, content dictates the form. So I said, what is the form that is kind of tearing us apart while also building us at the same time? And it seemed like it was popular music. It's like dumbing us down while at the same time
yeah,
it's like, yep, it's bringing us up, and it
yeah,
uses its imperfect rhymes and its simple chord structures in order to reach the people, as opposed to, a classical song is always trying to reach the hem of God, trying to show
Mm.
how great we can be as human beings. But a pop song is just trying to reach the people. So it felt like it needed to be pop songs, all popular music, not just pop songs, but popular music, folk songs, and just anything that anyone would sing in a pub. And then I thought it needed to be durational because the audience needed to be falling apart, but building themselves as a result of falling apart, and that I
Mm.
needed to be falling apart, but building myself as a result of falling apart. And that I would lose support through the show. So we started with 24 musicians in the first hour of the show, and every hour we lose a musician. And that was a bit of a metaphor for the AIDS epidemic. And so by the end of the show, it's just me, um, and the audience. And it was a pretty extraordinary piece of work
yeah.
What?
that
One by
we
one,
made.
the musicians would just, um, as the decades would go on, they just would disappear. So at the end, it was
Yeah,
just you and us.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
What? Because I do a 3-hour play, and I think that that is an extraordinary feat. What?
It is an extraordinary feat.
But
What are you talking about?
no, but like,
It's massive.
what does that feel like to know? And also, I know you prepped for it to be able to do the
Mm.
actual 24-hour, but that must have been an extraordinary. I'm just curious about the physical, emotional of actually kind of committing. I'm going to be performing for an audience for 24 straight hours. Like, what was that like, and what was that like after that? that happened?
Um,
And I'd like to just add your physical and emotional state as well, living through minute by minute all those hours.
yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, it's one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life. So I can't really say it was, it, it was pretty joyous.
Hmm.
It's not to say it wasn't difficult at times, but I've had much harder experiences making a 90-minute show. And I think it's partially that everyone just stepped up to it. It was this huge task, and so nobody put their ego ahead of the project, which was is rare in the theater. It's very rare in
Yes.
the theater. Uh, yeah, I mean, I feel like The Hang actually has a company that is doing that as well. They're a very generous company, and it's it's been pure love working with them under very challenging circumstance with COVID. But 20 for Decade was similar. You know, there was no drama. There really wasn't. So all the drama was kept on the stage. You know,
Mm.
and so that made it pretty joyous. And the and I always think just grappling with real issues and considerations always helps helps you get through something, you know, when something's just escapism, it can be sometimes be really exhausting,
Mm.
because you feel like you're actually in denial and you know you're trying to like squash everything, the real stuff from coming up. So so that was energizing, I think, to engage in our real history rather than act like the history is so great. And then uh, physically, we marathon trained it. So there was a lot of technique. I studied with Barbara Mayer Gustern how to do some vocal techniques that would alleviate some of my bad habits that I would have in a regular 90-minute concert. Then I had to sing a little bit differently. I had to raise the soft palate and not
Huh.
have like the hard onset of vocal thing. You know, had to do a lot of things that as a more rock and rolly singer that I,
Hmm.
done some had some bad techniques over the years that I've developed. So so that was that, and then marathon training, like doing 90-minute concerts and then 3-hour concerts and then 5-hour concerts, 6-hour
Right.
concerts, and then
Right.
we did a 12-hour concert, which actually was harder than the 24-hour one.
Wow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Why is
What?
that, you think?
Um, I think there's something about it was something about knowing that there was still more work to be done after the 12-hour concert, um, and not having the full support of, it was a kind of bare bones 12-hour concert. So we didn't have the full band. We didn't have backup singers yet. We
Huh.
didn't, but also just that knowing that you've still got another 12 hours of workshops and things that you have to do and build and in order to get through it. And um and the 24-hour, there's something about the adrenaline of it being a one-time only event that just gets you through it. Yeah.
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 So there was no moment when you were at like 23, 30 where you were like, oh God, there's 30 minutes
Oh
left.
no, I mean, there were a few moments where I thought, am I going to be able to do this? But at a certain point when I got to hour 18, I thought, yeah, I can do it. I
Oh, that's
can
cool.
I can get through the rest. I just, but by the end of the show I had maybe an octave range. I mean, maybe. I mean,
Huh.
my chords were so swollen by the
I
end that
bet.
I
Oh
was
my God.
everything sounded like I was singing like this. But it wasn't like 24 hours of gentle singing either. It was,
Yeah.
all in.
How long did you sleep after?
Oh, well, I went home with my dear friend, who's really my sister, Kat, and who'd flown to New York to see the show, and my husband Pat, and we were at the um, it was the lunch table. We were at the dining table, and I fell asleep at the dining table.
Oh.
Like
I
and then
bet
we
you
went to
did.
bed, and then both of us, my husband and I, we woke up. I don't know, maybe 8 hours later, and we just felt like we hadn't had enough sleep, but we just couldn't stop talking about everything that happened. So
Were you
it
still
was kind
talking
of
like
funny.
Elaine Stritch, or that
Oh
had gone
yeah,
away?
that
Oh yeah.
lasted for a good week. And then a week after that, I had to go to Ireland to do another concert, which that was a whole nother story.
Oh,
Wow.
God bless.
Yeah.
God bless.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Amazing.
I wouldn't change it for anything. It was a great, it was, it's the kind of thing that makes you feel like an adult. In the theater, I
Mm,
think there's a little arrested development that happens because
yeah.
we're always playing our whole lives. So, and people kind of condescend to us our whole lives because
Hmm.
our job is to play.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there's an arrested development, and doing a show like that really just, I was like, I'm an adult now.
Yeah, you sure are. I wanna talk to you a little bit about what you say about failure
Mm.
and falling on your face and what you can learn. And I read that you say you must embrace it. How do you embrace failure as a legitimate aim of art?
Well, it is art.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not, I don't even know if it's an aim of art. It just is so interesting. Failure is the most interesting thing. They don't write plays about people succeeding nonstop. It's
Yeah,
the
right.
plays
There'd
and
be
all
no
the
play.
movies and all the
Right.
TV shows you see are about people failing until they succeed at the last moment.
It's true.
So usually that's the hero's journey is fail, 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 and then finally triumph. Or if you don't triumph, it's a tragedy, and if you do, it's a comedy. And that's what most of stories, that's how they're structured. That Aristotelian structure is, not that they're the exact same thing, but most things are structured in that way. So failure is the way that we express ourselves anyways, except people fake it. And what I learned in the
Ah,
clubs is it's way more interesting to not fake it, to put yourself
Huh.
in a situation where you fail on a stage
uh-huh.
and you have to figure it out anyways. I learned this because my friend and I was trying to win $100 at some drag show at, I forget the bar. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was one of those like Bridge and Tunnel gay clubs. And I was trying to win that $100 so I could literally buy food because I was so poor. And so I go to this show and I sing my freaking guts out, and the audience, I'm kind of a weird freaky drag queen, and this is way before RuPaul, before anyone had any exposure to freaky drag queens that above 14th Street, and this bar was above 14th Street. So, so I sing my freaking guts out, and they're not used to seeing drag queens sing, and they're not used to my kind of weird drag, and so they're
Right.
like, "Oh, that's nice, yeah, good, okay." And then I watched this queen go up there, and she lip synced badly to that song, "My pussy and my crack." She lip synced badly to it. Then she took her teeth out, and she had two teeth, and then she smiled, and the audience went insane, and she won the $100.
Of course she did.
Of course she did, and
Oh my
deservedly so.
God, yeah.
I was trying to bring all my perfection and polish, and I
All she
was,
had to do was
I
pull her teeth out.
she just had to show that she was a vulnerable human being
Yes.
and be
Yeah,
brave in that
Yeah.
vulnerability. And I
they
really
ate it
learned
up.
that night. I thought, okay, you've got to always incorporate some kind of authentic failure into every show you do. So I
Huh.
do.
Ah,
Yeah.
wow. I love that. I love that you say that. I mean, you say it in
Yeah.
such a way that it just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so I mean, so it can manifest itself in many different ways, writing something that has so many lyrics you couldn't possibly ever do it correctly, or it could be doing something so long that your voice is going to crack,
Right.
or just showing your belly, or whatever it might be, just like, instead of trying to hide all of the things that other people call flaws, just say, this is who I am, this is my humanity, I'm here.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
something so beautiful in allowing yourself to be human and still like take
Mhm.
care of yourself in a way or celebrate yourself through those things. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
I
Yeah,
love
that's
go ahead.
that's the magic.
That is the
That's
magic.
that's
I
Doctor
love. and
I call it
it's
doctor show, like you expose the thing about yourself you don't want the rest of the world to know, and then everyone goes, "Oh yeah, I didn't want people to know that about me either." And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
right,
then that's the real catharsis that happens
and a
in the
connection,
exchange. Yeah.
a
You
real
know,
connection.
Eric wrote a great question, and now talking about all of this, I want to ask it, which was, what do you think your job as a theater artist is? Yeah,
You're stealing
Yeah.
my question. All
I'm
right,
stealing your
go ahead.
question. I'm stealing it.
Go ahead.
What do I think that my
You,
job as a theater artist is Ooh, I mean, I think it's probably just to inspire people to dig a little deeper into their considerations. I think of myself as a diviner, so
Hmm.
I'm out there with a divining rod looking for the profundity, and it starts to vibrate, and I'm like, I think the profundity might be right here, and then I say to the audience, start digging, you know,
huh.
Yeah.
and I think that's primarily what I'm trying to do. It's I mean it's to remind people of the things they've forgotten, dismissed, or buried. It's really, it's never teaching. I'm never the audience. Most of my audience is smarter than me about something,
Hmm.
um, so it's always about just trying to remind them of things that they've forgotten, dismissed, or buried, or that other people have buried for them.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That
I
other
like
people
that.
have buried for them. Oof, Lord.
Your shows explore. We've been talking about it for a while, identity, but I've heard. I read recently that you said that how bored you are with identity
You're gonna
politics.
get me in trouble.
No, 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 no. I won't get you in trouble. You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to. But,
No, I
um,
mean, it's not that I'm bored with identity or identity politics. Um, it's that I see myself every day in the
mm,
mirror. I see
mhm,
myself. So I don't feel like my goal as a theater artist is to be seen. I feel like my goal as a theater artist is to see other people
Mm.
and their circumstance, and so I guess I get a little bit bored with people who just want to be seen for the sake of healing whatever brokenness is in them for valid reasons, but uh, I just think I think for me that the better, because I've never seen myself in anything, I mean, people say like you're a white guy or whatever, and I go, does that mean I'm supposed to, when I see Captain America, I feel seen? Like,
Mm.
I don't like,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I've
yeah.
never seen myself in any piece of art ever. But I think the goal is to see other people. And when you do that, um, then the world gets better, I think. But please don't confuse that with me suggesting that um, some queen that never gets any attention taking up space is a bad thing. That is the glorious thing.
Yeah.
No, and I
Yeah.
and I
It's
wasn't
like,
I wasn't alluding to that at all.
yeah.
I was just talking about the politics side of it,
Yeah, I
and
guess. Yeah, I mean, the politics side of it is like, um, I mean, I just see it as both ways. And I want people who are un um, who do not have a quality to um, be recognized and seen in the world, and I want people like members of the GOP who think that they don't have equality but actually have more power and more privilege to to see other people.
Mm.
So it's a complicated thing to talk about, um,
so
but
we could
it's
be seen as
essentially
well.
the reason we have this whole Donald Trump, mania is because a bunch of people thought that they were being ignored, and he was the only one who paid them
Mhm.
any attention. So of course they became lemmings to him,
They
Mhm.
and
felt
so
seen. They
yeah, so
felt
I think
seen and
that
they
it's
felt
a
heard.
tricky road to go down, that desire to, um,
Well,
yeah.
how do you, you talk about being a diviner, like how do you go about seeing people and shining that light on
I just think that that's the easiest part in the world, but um, it does require you to. I mean, for me, I don't know for other people, but for me, it's when I make space for other people, I always end up making space for myself as well. So if I like with the hang, I hear Queen Esther sing, and I think, well, gosh,
Hmm.
if I could sing on stage with Queen Esther or get to listen to Queen Esther sing every day, it will make me happier. It will make me a better person. I will feel I will feel joyous about coming into work every day. So why don't I just make a little space in the show for her to have a couple solos so that I can enjoy it, my life better. Like, so I don't know. I don't find it very difficult. I mean, the trick is to find a balance. That's always the trick with all things is, you don't want to. I worked really hard to chisel a little space for a little tiny corner in the American theater for myself, and sometimes I feel like people are asking me to give up even that, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to give up that little tiny corner. But
No.
that doesn't mean I can't invite a lot of people into the corner with me,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's how I don't know. I mean, and I work with a lot of people who all have their own careers.
Hmm.
They're not necessarily um, they're not people who tend to audition. It's more people who, are making their own art. And then I'm like, could you come and make art with me for a little while, and then,
That's fun.
and
Yeah.
yeah. So that's tends to be more how I cast and do things. I scout more than I don't, I don't really like, we're about to audition for two roles for something just because they're so incredibly difficult to find. But for the most part, I don't like to audition. I like to just scout, like find somebody who is a muse, who's really inspirational, and then just try to wrangle
Mm.
them into my show.
Do you are
So,
you do you go out and seek? Do you go to see new things and new pieces, or you hear
I mean,
about
I
things
do. I mean, in the
you go?
COVID
Yeah,
time, it's hard to
yeah, of
say that
course.
I've been very
Before COVID, yeah,
proactive about that. But yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I mean, m- some of the best education that I got was when I first moved to New York City. I went to an acting trade school, and but they had a program there where we got free tickets to everything.
Mm.
It's different now. I think probably producers aren't so generous, but I used to see everything for free. So I would go four times a week at least to see everything from off Broadway to through Broadway, and so it was an incredible education and the range of theater. Because there's no place like New York in terms of how much theater
Yeah.
there is. So and how different it all is. So uh, I don't know. I can't remember the question anymore, but
No, I was just asking, where you find these people before
oh
COVID,
yeah, yeah,
obviously
yeah.
that you
I
just
kept that practice, but
right,
I can't say I go four times a week anymore. But
right, of
Yeah.
I
course.
definitely like I think that developed the scout in me. I got much more interesting, and also the kinds of things that I write. Sometimes it requires somebody with great Stanislavski technique, and sometimes it requires that person at the club who
Yeah.
understands how to take their teeth out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's better. So you can't always find those people if you just have an open call. You gotta go find, you gotta go hunting for them.
Yeah. You also say you talk about Maria Callas and Nina Simone about being artists without flaws and failure. You say some of your favorite artists are Nina Simone and Maria Callas, and why is that?
Oh, well, that's because I mean, Nina Simone, she is not concerned about hitting the pitch. She's singing in between the pitch, and she's giving you a truth about the subject matter she's talking about,
Hmm.
and so she's willing to expose her vulnerability and her imperfection in order to get at something even more deep and profound. And
Hmm.
there's just no greater singer, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you.
Mm.
And she can hit the pitch if she wants to,
Hmm.
but when you watch her live video performances, she's doing something else. She's channeling something,
Yeah.
and it is not.
Yeah.
she worked on the technique, got the technique down, but she is not obsessed with the technique anymore. She's obsessed with channeling the story that she wants to tell, and there's just nobody better. She was
Yeah.
a real storyteller.
And
In
with
between
extraordinary
the notes,
technique,
yes,
with
yes.
extraordinary skill.
Right,
But
but
like,
that she
extraordinary
could
technique.
she could play with it. She found her own kind of art within her own voice.
Nobody was like her. Nobody. Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
I
All those
agree.
years isolated alone, like playing the piano, though, I mean, it did something to her. Yeah. And Matt Ray is very similar to, not necessarily the vocally, but in terms of his, I mean, he doesn't sound anything like her, and he doesn't play anything like her. But in terms of
Mhm.
our composer, he's spending so much time alone as a kid, just working on that piano and learning that piano and learning that piano. And there's a lot of pain in that. And then as an adult, he's transcended that pain and put it into his art. And it's you really got to hear what he wrote for this show. It's just so glorious.
Well,
And the same thing with
I can't wait
Machine.
to see it.
Machine also, all that loneliness of being a queer kid growing up in middle
Mhm.
America, and just like channeling it in storing up all these ideas that you're not able to express when you're a kid, and then just letting it all out for the audience now.
and it's so beautiful and colorful and like
Yeah.
it's just like
Mhm.
visually incredible.
Yeah.
And if somebody's trying to take you away from your little theater corner, I will write a strongly worded letter to somebody.
Yeah, I'll take them down myself too.
You're so sweet.
We don't have a
Nobody
question
really
from
is, but
from
like sometimes it feels that way when you get a rejection letter.
the no question, but I do have a statement from I don't know if I can pronounce the name right. Isaias Fanlo wrote from the UK. I will never forget the 24 hours as long as I live. It was sort of a utopian experience of community, a queer community where everyone felt seen and literally embraced. So I'm so grateful for it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, that's funny that after we were just talking about that desire to not be seen. But for
Mhm.
me, it's more about like my job is to see, and maybe this is coming from a person of relative, privilege, or I don't know, everybody has different levels of privilege, but for me, I feel like it is my job to see more than but every time I do that, I end up getting a lot of attention. So I don't know. It's a very strange thing.
You know what I'm curious about? Things were obviously much different 25, 30 years ago, when you would like places like La Mama and little off Broadway plays where people were doing a lot of experimental theater and a lot of experimental storytelling. That it's so you're doing an art form that that no one else is doing anymore.
I don't know if that's true. I feel like there's a lot of experimental work going on. What I find that it's weird is that uh, it's not so weird. It makes sense. Capitalism has taken
Mm,
over so many things, and
yeah.
Broadway has been taken over in such a major way by capitalism. Even though it's a commercial, it's
Yeah.
entity, and it was always engaged in capitalism. Edward Albee had a one-act play on Broadway where
Yeah.
it was literally a box sitting on the stage, and all you did was listen to a voiceover.
Mhm.
Right.
That and now we put Gary on Broadway, and everyone was like, "It's so crazy." I'm like, "It's not that crazy." Have you seen the chairs, Ionesco's the chairs? It's like
Yeah.
Yeah.
crazier than this, like
Yeah.
way crazier. So I don't understand I don't really understand the always defining. I mean, like all I'm doing is putting on eyeliner. It's not that weird. You know what I mean? It's like there's some poetry in it, yes, because I was raised thinking Shakespeare was the greatest playwright in the world,
Mhm.
and that you're supposed to make your shows have complex language, and that's a positive goal. And so like, but for some reason, you're supposed to make everything just easily digestible. So that's the thing
Mm,
that I find, that particular trend of making everything so easily
yeah,
digestible and so predictable is, I, it bores me. That bores me more than
yeah,
identity
I bet it
politics.
does. Yeah.
yeah.
What was the jump like to Broadway?
Um, it was well, let me talk about the positive things,
Yes, please.
because sometimes I feel like maybe I get in a negative loop when I talk
Mm-mm,
about it.
nothing
But
negative.
the
Please.
positive things were, that Julie White was
Yeah.
a godsend.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just that her and Christine Nielsen, they took over those two roles. Uh,
Well,
I mean,
for the audience
Andrea
that don't know, Andrea Martin had to drop out
Yeah,
due
she
to
slipped at home. She slipped at
right.
home and broke her ribs. So somebody
Oof.
said that it happened in rehearsal. It did not happen in rehearsal.
Okay.
She slipped at home. And so she had to leave right when we were starting previews. And so Julie White and Christine Nielsen, they memorized those roles um, in like 2 days.
Oh God.
And then they were thrust in front of an audience.
Unbelievable.
Um, and it was just remarkable watching them
Uh,
work. And Julie, she got up on that stage and she has the opening prologue is all hers
Hmm.
in the play. And the first time she read it on the Broadway stage, she didn't, not even a rehearsal room, just going straight to the Broadway stage to like read the thing, not even downstairs in the lobby or anything. And she's on the stage, she reads it for the very first time, and it didn't work. Right. And then she went, "Oh, let me do that again." And she read it
mm,
again, and it was like bam.
yeah,
Like just like she every single time she did it, she got better and better and
yeah,
better and better, and she kept discovering and kept finding things. And I've it was such uh, uh, uh one of the great I mean, the sense memory of watching her and continually dig into the role,
yeah,
even when she knew she was nailing it every night. She still dug into the role to find new things.
yeah.
And I was so flabbergasted at how wonderful to work with her is, and to watch her work is. So that was a great gift, to
Talk
have that.
about
To have that, not many people get that experience of watching
Hmm.
somebody
yeah,
save a show. You know,
yeah.
Yeah.
like yeah,
She's one of our best actresses
She's
by
yeah,
amazing.
far.
yeah,
Unbelievable artist.
And talk
yeah.
about failure, but at the same time, like having the sense to be able to calibrate and be aware of the work and deliver the work to go, oh no, let's check, check,
Hmm.
check, check. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and to play in the moment, fully committed to each moment, and then also have a critical eye going on at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah.
I don't, I mean, yeah, that's the dream.
It
Um,
is.
I mean, we're running out of time, but
Uh,
like you're so thoughtful and generous, and so I'm gonna steal another one of Eric's questions. But what does it feel like to be an actual genius?
ah!
That was
Yeah.
my last question. You stole it. Take it.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
yeah, without a college degree, and with I don't know, I'm an I'm not the smart. I'm never the smartest person in the room, but I want to be. That's the difference. I have the drive to learn more
Yeah,
because I went to a pretty bad public school. I had a pretty bad public school education, and I had a lot of emotional problems when I was a kid, because I was queer in a homophobic world during the AIDS epidemic. But I uh, when I finally was out on my own and living, making the choices I wanted to make, it was about, how much can I learn? Can I learn? Can I learn? Can I
mm,
learn? So I think that's the only difference is that I just trying to learn more things. I don't know anything about Socrates, before I just found out about Socrates 5 years ago. But you say, oh, I want to learn about this, so I'm going to make a show
Yeah.
about it. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about American history, really. I knew such little, and still kind of don't even know as much as I'd like to. So, I made a show that was 24 hours long about American history so I could learn about it.
Mhm.
So I think that's, I don't know, that's, yeah.
That makes you
Again,
extraordinary.
it's like,
It is.
it's failing. It's like you say, oh, I
Mhm.
don't know how to do eyeliner. I don't know how to do really good eye makeup. So my makeup is going to be bad eye makeup. And then I'll just do that for the first few years, and then I'll slowly start to learn things.
Mhm.
Then I'll have to change it and make a different choice about my aesthetic. So
It's
that's kind of
about falling on your face, failing, and then doing it again. But
yeah,
to
yeah,
me,
yeah.
you are a genius, and what you've given to the world as an artist, we appreciate, and we love you and your work, and we love you for being here today. And
Yes.
I know
Thanks for
I
having me.
feel smarter now
Ah!
after talking to you. I can't wait to come see the show in a few weeks. I'm very, very excited.
It's really fun. It really
Yeah,
is.
I
It's
truly
a
believe
strange,
you're one of a
cathartic
kind,
work.
and
Yeah, but
I can't wait to see it. So thank you so much.
thank
Yes.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for joining
spending
us.
time.
That's
And
our show. Go ahead.
next
No,
time you'll
please.
be able to see my face. I'm like,
Oh,
it's just once we close the show, this is going
that's
away.
coming right off. Well, that is our
Uh,
show. Next Monday,
uh,
February 7th, my darling Joy D. Michelle will join me in interviewing the international award-winning writer, director, and producer Tina Andrews. We will discuss her amazing career as well as her philanthropic efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and work with the American Cancer Society. Then we're going to take a couple of weeks off and return on Monday, February 28th with Queen Jean. Queen Jean is a New York City-based costume designer who has draped over 50 shows and counting. She is the founder of Black Trans Liberation and has fully committed her voice for the advocacy of marginalized communities with an emphasis on Black trans people. More
yes,
information
please.
about these and future guests and how to attend one of the recordings online can be found on our website, live@thelortel.com. Thank you for joining us. Happy Lunar New Year. Let's all get vaccinated, please. Let's all get boosted and wear your mask and be safe. Theater is coming back, and you can go see our guest show that is playing through March. There's very strict rules, though. Past
We're
today, you
actually
have to,
sold
yeah.
out. The
Oh,
entire run
well,
is
then
sold out.
never mind. Go wait
That
in the
that
line.
people, you can wait in line and try to get those tickets
Wait
for
in
those
line
people
and
that
wait.
didn't show up.
Yep. Wait in line. Theater is coming back and it's sold out. And we hope to see you at the theater soon. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, my genius of a guest.
Yeah.
I find you
Thank you.
extraordinary. Good night,
Thank you
everybody. Have a
both.
good
Thank you
night
both.
and be safe, please.
And I can't wait to
Good
see you
night.
in Passing Straight again.
Oh,
I
Yeah,
mean,
me
not
too.
Passing Straight. I'm
Strange
sorry,
loop. Yeah.
Strange Loop.
No,
I'll
Strange
get.
Loop. Me too.